shrine name is saved for the king.
The game is yours to play now.
The light provides.
This is Eventide Radio.
Hello and welcome back to Eventide Radio, a fan-made Destiny podcast where we have roundtable discussions about a variety of different topics concerning the popular video game franchise. At its core, this show is about having in-depth discussions about the game from a variety of different perspectives. I'm your host, Scotty, and with me is my co-host, Rob, and today we are talking about story, because there has been a lot going on, surprisingly, in Season of the Seraph in terms of story. So, Rob, talk to me a little bit about your thoughts so far.
This season's been pretty interesting, and I want more of it, and I'm not ready to part with it because I want more of it. And I don't know if it's because there's that kind of linkage to like Siva and kind of the Iron Lords and some of that stuff. But it's a good season. But yeah, the I guess spoiler warning. So I think like the 4th or 5th week, Anna kind of gets the idea of, hey, maybe because like, so basically each week is, we think we need to get closer to unlocking Rasputin and getting him to kind of come back together if we continue to run these heist battlegrounds and collect data from these not war mines, but what are like fragments of
submines?
Submines. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And so like that's kind of the rationale behind running these heist battlegrounds is you keep collecting data when you complete them that maybe kind of build a bigger picture. And finally, Anna's like, what if we go and try to find Fellspring, which is Fellwinter's ghost? So they make there's a mission where you go to the Iron Temple, and it kind of plays similarly to the first mission in Rise of Iron, like not the whole gondola part, but basically once you get to the map that is now in the PvP map, like that whole area, you're like fighting off a bunch of Fallen, and then you get to Fellwinter Peak and you find Fellspring kind of over by, there was a couple of dogs like on the left side. So you go across the bridge and get to Fellwinter Peak. You can't like climb the top like you could in Rise of Iron. I think there's like an invisible barrier that kills you. But basically, once you start getting and going to the Fellspring, immediately Rasputin like comes to life and starts talking. And first kind of has the voice akin to Clovis Bray, but then he like modulates it so it doesn't quite sound like him. And then you get a really, really, really awesome cutscene. It's one of those kind of like animated ones that basically finally reveals that Clovis Bray created Rasputin with the sole intent to destroy the Traveler, so like kind of a big aha moment. Yeah. That he was created to destroy the Traveler and then basically replace the Traveler so that he could be perceived by humanity as the true machine savior. But because Anna saw more to Rasputin, he's more than a weapon. That's why that's the name of like the quest. That he's more than a weapon, that she started, teaching him about like literature and music and like drama and humanity, basically, that is what prevented him from destroying the Traveler. And there's a really cool part of the cutscene where it shows Anna like sitting at a computer terminal, and then it implies, like the darkness came and the collapse happened, and then it like wipes to Anna sitting there as a skeleton now dead because the collapse happened. So it's a kind of dark. The music's really good. Like it's parts from like Beyond Light playing in there. But yeah, so basically Clovis Bray is the world's biggest D-bag, and all along wanted to destroy the Traveler, but Anna basically saved humanity because she taught Rasputin to be more than that.
Wow.
And so then you get back to the helm. You basically 86 Clovis Bray out of that exo, and then Rasputin's conscious gets like uploaded to it, and now whenever you go to the helm and talk to that robot, it's Rasputin talking to you.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
s-
Wow.
so that happened, and then there's been some stuff with Marasov where basically she's like, "You cannot keep doing what we're doing. Like, we can't keep fighting the Wrathborn because it's basically feeding into Zivo Wrath's plan that the more you kill and destroy, even if you're killing Zivo Wrath's forces, it's just making her stronger, and like that's the whole point. And so she was kind of implying you need to like stop Rasputin or shut him down or don't let him on this course because it's gonna be worse in the long run. And so then the decision was like, well, we need to like stalemate the whole thing. There's like a cutscene where you go to Zavala's office and all the players are there. Mithrax is there and Marasov's there and Zavala's there and Keitel. And basically you come to this agreement of like, okay, well, we're not gonna turn on the offensive, but we're also not gonna like just stand idly by and kind of continue to support the defense. And then this last week we got another mission. It was much shorter, but you basically did you ever do the sleeper simulant quest in Taken King?
No, though it was complicated.
Yeah, so there's all the Warsat public events that everyone to this day still kind of like resents. But there's a kind of a one of the missions from the Taken King where you go into one of Rasputin's bunkers on the Cosmodrome and you like scan something and then it ends. But then if you're doing the sleeper simulant quest, there's like a harder version of it where once you scan that thing, an elevator takes you down to a deeper part of the bunker and you have to fight more enemies, and you actually go and do that exact thing. You go into the deeper elevator part and like extract more data, and that's been like kind of the most recent thing is he like Rasputin is basically like, I'm not really sure like from like a calculation standpoint if this whole stalemate thing's going to work, but we got to keep trying what we're trying. And in the meantime, keep doing heist battlegrounds to collect more data, and like that's the season so far. And I think when you log in, there's a thing that says like the last 2 or 3 weeks are going to have some kind of event leading up to Lightfall, and then ultimately also like resolving this. Um, so yeah, kind of a big reveal and a big deal of like what the actual intent of Rasputin was.
Mm-hmm.
And during that during that mission, the one from this week where you go down into the bunker again, he talks about because the other theory is that Rasputin's the one that shot down the Traveler because he thought he was going to escape.
That was my question.
Actually,
Yeah.
yeah,
Was
Rasputin
that
directly
confirmed, I assume?
he addresses it and says, I'm pretty sure he says I was going to and then I didn't. Because like he and kind of the exact theory that everyone has is like everyone, like during the collapse, everyone thought the Traveler was going to run, just kind of like what he did during To the Fallen, and that Rasputin shot him down. But I think he explicitly says I didn't do it.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
but he considered it, but basically because of Anna's humanity teaching that like that was really what conflicted him. I'm pretty sure I only listened to the dialogue once, and that's kind of one of those things like I like to go back and like watch and listen while I'm not playing, so I'm not as distracted by getting shot at, to really like take in what I've heard. But I believe that's my understanding of like kind of the current thing. Like I watched that cutscene from like the fourth week like 4 or 5 times at this point because it's pretty awesome in terms of like the implications of basically everything and Rasputin. So it's a cool season.
That's so awesome. I
Yeah.
I kind of wish I was like up to date with this because it seems neat.
Yeah, it does.
Um,
Yeah,
I'm
it's
glad that this like they're making legitimate like moves within the story and that stuff is happening because that's not common with these like typical seasons. So it's very cool.
right. Yeah. It's been good. Oh, and then right at the last dialogue thing is he talks about basically, before the collapse, he Rasputin would select people to be defenders that would get to kind of try out new weapons, and those are the Seraphs, right? And he's like, in a way, those were guardians before guardians, and so he's like, the Traveler and I basically had the same idea of arming, like finding the best people and arming them so that they can defend humanity. And he's like, I'm glad like the Traveler and I kind of saw eye to eye on something to that effect, which is cool too. Like just cool stuff.
That's sick. So how does this story compare to the other ones for you? It's just one of the best.
In terms of like seasonal stories,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
for
no,
what?
not ranking it against like
Yeah.
campaigns.
Because Witch Queen still has stuff that I'm like, you're trying to digest and completely make heads or tails of. But
Yeah.
um, I will say for this expansion, I liked some of the stuff in Season of the Risen, because it definitely was kind of a like we're like literally trying to extract the brainwave thoughts of like hives so that we can understand what their plans are. And you can definitely like argue that that's kind of almost gets into like war crime torture area, and that's why like Crow did what he did and accidentally killed that uh
Is Scion?
the Scion. Yeah, I couldn't think of the name. And like that whole kind of exchange of Saladin like forfeiting his life and becoming like Valis Forge. Like that's a pretty cool arc in like the like overall main story of Destiny, and pretty awesome. Like then when you have what Season of the Haunted, which like I don't have much love for the Leviathan, so going back to it, like as cool as it was, like I wasn't totally blown away by it in terms of wow, I'm so glad we get to come back, and it's all taken over by evil scorn and all that. Like it's cool. um but story wise, yeah, like he's evil and now he's one of the followers of the darkness. Like, yeah, okay, we could all kind of saw that one coming.
Sure.
Season of the Plunder, get 7 MacGuffins to make a what is everyone calling it? Nez Cafe, because it's Nezerath. So like that in terms of story was kind of silly, but like this is like resolving things from like vanilla D1, which is cool. That's why I think this season's pretty awesome. Like we're actually, I was curious as we approached Lightfall and then ultimately the final shape, like are we gonna get answers to questions like what is the Traveler? Like really in some like
Ooh.
comprehensive way that we can understand, besides things like the winnower and the gardener and that kind of stuff. Like that there's like the abstract stuff that you can read in the lore, but having kind of like a realization and understanding, like are we going to get things like that by the time we get to the final shape?
It's a
And
good question.
things like this, like what was Rasputin really, and where does he fit in with like the timeline of the collapse and all that? And like this actually fills in a pretty big piece of the puzzle. So I felt really satisfied like watching that cutscene and kind of knowing things, because I think I think Destiny's at its best when it kind of walks that weird like science fiction line. Like obviously all the weird evil space magic fantasy stuff is cool, but I like the science fiction-y stuff I think more. Like I think that's why I gravitate towards things like Siva more than like The Taken.
Yeah.
And so like getting some revelations related to that I think was just like really good.
Totally. I think the Rasputin Warmind stuff has always been one of my favorite parts of Destiny's story. It's always been one of the most interesting parts. Not to mention, I just think the aesthetic is cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is very cool. What did you say happened to Clovis after all this? What did
So
they do?
you basically, yeah, I know I said he got 86. Basically, like he was in that avatar body.
Did they just delete him?
Yeah, she basically like control shift delete him and then let Then basically she's like, well, he still has his version of himself on Europa, and you can bet your ass that like he knows you're coming. So there, so now there's like theories running around like, is he going to join the darkness? Because his last chance to try to like integrate himself into the current like the city and the current state of technology has failed because he got revealed to be kind of an evil a-hole. And so, what's his last chance of immortality and whatever,
Yeah.
Clovis Bray's final end goal is as an entity in this world. Yeah, he's
Totally.
probably going to join the evil darkness in some capacity. So
Yeah, that would make perfect sense considering his character is essentially this like almost like a caricature of like this guy who exclusively cares about his legacy
right.
and his, just being a god essentially.
Yeah.
So obviously he's going to do whatever he possibly can to fulfill that role. And so the next thing is totally the witness is going to come knocking on his doorstep.
Oh yeah. Well, kind of like what it did for Aramis, right?
Oh, Aramis too, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, hey, look, you're desperate. Obviously, whatever path you were taking wasn't working out for you. Why don't you join my group? But obviously, you see things because there's like kind of these revelations that because Aramis screwed up, that the punishment, because she failed to get the 7 MacGuffins to make the Nez Cafe for herself, that her Wrathborn, or I'm sorry, her
like House
evil,
Salvation.
yeah, House Salvation have been turned into Wrathborn and Scorn, because there's like one of the dialogue pieces is like not Erisborn.
Oh, I remember this. Yeah, they said that this was like retribution of some kind.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So like punishment for failing. So yeah, obviously,
Mhm.
if that's kind of how things go in Lightfall, that's probably what's going to happen to Callus, right? His people are probably going to be taken from him if he fails as a disciple.
True.
And so I really like that dynamic where it's like genuinely evil, kind of like we're not, there's that kind of like, oh, what's light and what's dark, and one just happens to use the darkness, but like these are genuinely evil things where like you're betraying your own people that have like chosen to follow you because they fail you, and like you kind of just typical bad guy stuff, and maybe it's cliche, but I kind of like it a little bit. Like
I like it too. That's what the witness should be, is like
Yeah.
a cliche bad guy, because he's literally like the embodiment of evil.
Right. Right. There's no defending these actions, and like so
He should not be a morally gray thing. He should be.
yeah.
He's darkness, right?
Yeah.
Do you think they're gonna ever? I liked what you brought up earlier. Do you think they're ever going to explain what the Traveler is? I think there's an argument there. I don't know if I agree, but I think there is a valid argument as to maybe they don't explain what the Traveler is and they keep it somewhat vague.
I would say maybe not. You like I hope there's not just like an exposition dump where like for some reason Bill Nye comes back and he's like, we called it the Traveler because as it turns out it was an alien from planet Zorbon, and it's one of 8,000 other
Yeah.
giant golf balls. Like I don't want something like that. But
Actually, it's one of Rasputin's submines.
yeah, exactly. It's from the future, and it like traveled back to warn humanity, and like I don't want something like that. But
yeah, I mean, I feel like if you explain what the Traveler is, you almost take away the entire point of the Traveler. Like what
Right.
it's been for its like the entirety of Destiny is this like ambiguous force almost. And
Right.
like if you explain it, it's almost not the Traveler anymore.
Yeah. I
If
I
that
do
makes
agree
sense.
with that. Yeah, no, I think there should always be somewhat of a not fully
Like
vetted system, but
Mhm.
I guess it's like it would be nice to understand why the darkness is pursuing it. Like, is there a deeper, longer history at some point where like the light or the Traveler did something like that upset the darkness? Like, I guess maybe that is that part of like the winnower and the gardener story, like
Yeah.
the
Like as to like why the darkness
Yeah,
sought
like
out the
why
traveler in the first place.
exactly. Like why did the traveler feel like it needed to travel from like race to find a society that it could cling on to both defend and be defended by?
Yeah,
Just some kind of a little more, I guess, a little more traveler lore to some degree. I agree. Like flat out just saying what it is, I think kind of takes away from it because it's almost like it's not important to a certain degree.
yeah.
Um,
I think I would agree.
but getting a little bit more might be kind of interesting. And I think we are getting that right. Like that was one of the biggest reveal points during the Witch Queen campaign, right? Is that the Traveler came to the Hive first before they were the Hive, and basically the darkness got there first and kind of deceived them into thinking that this orb in the sky was some great evil, and it was just kind of a miscommunication or a basic lie that set forth in motion, like, who knows how different the outcome would have been if the Hive were selected by the Traveler. Like, it's like crazy to think about.
Yeah,
And that's a big reveal. And I guess I hope we continue to get more things like that. Like it'd be kind of cool to know why the Traveler left the Elixni. Like I don't think that's ever been completely explained, right? Like we just know the whirlwind, the great event that it left, but I don't know if there's a flat out reason why.
hard, clean answer as to why. I don't think so either. This is again where we need like a lore expert to
Right.
come
Yeah.
and yell at us for not knowing something. I don't think so either, though. That would be. I'm sure that will come up at some point for sure, considering how important the Elixni are in the current story. That would make sense. I'm excited. I mean, this sort of thing makes me very excited for Lightfall's story, what they could potentially do.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I'm I all of this, it just excites me. Like the what we got in the Witch Queen, what we're getting now in terms of seasonal stuff. Like these are big things and I'm excited.
yeah, me too. And it's nice to know. I'm honestly glad they've announced up to the final shape and everything.
Yeah.
It's nice knowing when this is gonna end
Yes.
because it really. I feel like it's been dragging a little bit. Not to say I haven't liked it, but like several expansions that felt like, yeah, this could be the end, but it's not the end. And it does feel a little redundant at some point. So it's nice to know here's where it's going to end, or at least the light and dark saga as they call it, and we get to speculate as to what is going to lead up to that. But it's
Right.
nice. It's nice knowing that they're not going to drag this out for as long as humanly possible,
Yes. Uh,
and that there
eh,
is a hard and fast date to like look towards and be like, that's the big finale.
yeah, I've kind of wondered that too, or thought about that. Like you have certain expansions that in the big scheme of things, like were they like, yeah, we're just trying to draw this out, or were they, these are ultimately going, like, in hindsight, I feel bad saying this, but Shadowkeep almost feels like it could have been like a season,
Not gonna lie, totally forgot that existed for a hot second.
right? Like and the events that occur, like important things happened in that time. Like we saved Saint 14 and brought him back. Um, but when you're like looking at what's the story you want to tell over the span of the year and what its implications are and like relative importance to like the overall narrative of the Light and Dark saga, like it feels like, and to a certain degree a lot of Forsaken kind of felt like that too. Where it's like Forsaken happened and needed to happen to kind of like rejuvenate Destiny. Ultimately, like we got a lot of important implications about the Awoken and the last Ahamkara, and that it was taken, and kind of like that set forth in motion a lot of things that we're still seeing kind of the ramifications of, right? So like in terms of like the overall story arc of the Darkness and Light saga. Like that seems relatively important. But then you get into Black Armory or Season of Opulence. Like they're good seasons, interesting stuff happened in there. But like if Season of Opulence didn't happen, does it really derail the current story and leave like a
Not
big
at
gaping
all.
hole? Or same
No.
with season like the Shadowkeep season, where you're
Season of
doing
Undying or whatever,
Season
like
of
the
the
next one.
Dying, right? Like that, all
Yeah.
of that to go into the Black Garden to stop the Undying Mind. Like it was a cool activity. I know some people didn't like it because it felt kind of samey after a while, but that was the start of the seasonal model. Whatever, like it is what it is. But like, is there anything directly from that that correlates to what's happening now? Like it's some of those it's hard to see like what the big picture is, and some of them do kind of feel like like filler seasons.
Yes.
And it's like could you comfortably take this 10-year story and could you have told it in maybe 6 years? Um, or would that have felt too accelerated? Would that have been now you've like I understand they're trying to like at the end of the day they're a business, they're trying to not milk the franchise, but they're trying to keep a franchise going so they can make money, keep the lights on, trying to tell this story. Like not every season's going to be completely relevant to the overall arc. We're going to get side tangents and things like that. But I have kind of wondered that like not every season seems like it ultimately needed to happen or ultimately have any relevance. And that like did you need to have that in there?
Yep. Yep. I'm with you. There's several like that. I think Season of Opulence for sure.
Yeah,
I'm not. I don't even actually know what happened besides that. I mean, there were some good lore books, but like as far as what happened in game, what we got bad juju. Like what even happened in Season of Opulence? There were several, but I guess I
well, I
mean,
guess I take that back. That was like the whole Crown of Sorrow, which ended up having
yeah,
relevance to the Glycon, but like
that wasn't even the season though. That was just the raid
yeah,
lair.
that's true.
So that was that was like a fraction of the actual season itself, and there wasn't really any story with like the menagerie or anything.
Yeah,
But people still look on it fondly. But yeah, I mean,
yeah,
ultimately, I think you could condense it into um a shorter period if you're trying to tell this story. But at the end of the day, it's a live service video game,
right,
which is a completely different medium, and
right,
the story is not the only thing you're trying to accomplish. So you're trying to, Season of Opulence exists because it's more gameplay content. Like Menagerie was awesome.
right,
If this was a movie, that would be stupid because it wouldn't make any sense.
right.
But yeah, it's a video game, so there's a lot of other things that they're other goals that they have, um, which ultimately sometimes hurts the story's pacing. I think at the end of
Yes,
the day.
and that no, I think that's a great way to the TLDR of it is, and that's what I was trying to formulate, and you just said it in one word is pacing.
Mhm.
Is like there's not like you said, there's not many other mediums that span one overarching narrative
Over like 10
over 10
years.
years
Yeah,
and have it be having people still care about it 10 years later. Like that's kind of a rare gem. Obviously
absolutely.
you have people fall off, you have people kind of only dial in for the main expansions, but that's totally fine. I think that's like they expect that in the model. Like not everyone's going to play religiously every season, but there are people that want to know the major story beats, right? You play the main campaign, all right, I'll check in a year. And if you still had that entertainment and fun, like great, like that's awesome. Um, and I think inevitably, like you said, it's going to have some low points in terms of pacing, um, because they do want it to span a while. And some of that might be too just like does this like the actual planning, like does the story make sense to tell in a year, or is that just way too much stuff happening where like because it sometimes you see that with certain movies, like if you're trying to take a book that has a lot of heavy themes and elements and characters and stuff that happens and try to cram it into one movie, it sometimes gets lost in translation.
Sure.
I think Game of Thrones is maybe a good example of that, right? Like I've never read those books, but from what I understand, they're pretty dense in terms of just like how much detail and information is stored in those pages. And you couldn't do the whole first book, so to speak, in one movie that's 2.5 hours long. You
Yep.
needed to stretch that out over 8 hours of episodes to really like set the stage, get characters explained, get things moving, like set this up so that it you feel a little more invested. And I think that you kind of have to do that a little bit with something like this, where it's like if you just had if you had the Vanilla D1, Taken King, and Rise of Iron all crammed into the first year, or even like the vanilla campaign, you might just be like, "What is this? Who are these people? Why are we now talking about these Taken people? I didn't even kill Crota. Now I have to go after his dad." Like it's a lot, and it might have been lost ultimately in the noise of everything if they did try to cram everything too much. So it's
Sure.
yeah.
That's true. It is one of those worlds that is just extremely well fleshed out, and there's a lot of characters and a lot of moving parts,
Yes.
and they all need time to breathe. There's a reason why something like Lord of the Rings has a 3-hour theatrical cut, and yet there
Yes.
still is an extended edition of these movies because it takes
Right.
that much time to
Yeah.
you let all those different gears breathe and have ample time to function. So yeah, you're right. Perhaps condensing it would rush everything
Right.
and not allow people to fully understand and connect with, what was currently happening. So that's true. There's good things to having quote unquote downtime, I guess.
Yeah.
Within the pacing of the story.
Yeah, and I'll try to give them the benefit of the doubt too. They may be making sure that they're properly internally like designing the story properly, right? They want to probably want to make sure that they don't introduce something that just blatantly contradicts something else that they've already introduced, right? They probably have internal fact checkers that are like, every time you introduce a new lore book and some new implication about this happened with this, like one of the dialogue things that was mentioned was Osiris was on the comms during the one mission where you go to like Fellwinter's Peak, and he talked about that Fellwinter and some of the other Iron Lords like trained him. So he has kind of a special connection and appreciation for the Iron Lords, specifically Fellwinter. Like he trained under Fellwinter, and that's kind of a side of Osiris that we've never seen before or never knew about, that he had spent time with the Iron Lords and trained under them.
That sounds new to me.
Right. So that's like a big implication of in terms of like the timeline and who trained Osiris and who did Osiris
Mhm.
train, like that we got a little piece of that puzzle, right? So now every time you have any kind of like recollection or anything related to Osiris, now you have to make sure that that doesn't contradict anything that's just been said in that one piece of dialogue. So it's like as you're making the story more complex, you also need to make sure you're not messing up the already complex story. So I imagine, again, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, I imagine that they want to make sure they get the story right and make it have an impact, like the Witch Queen, with the like now knowing that the traveler went and to the hive, but the darkness like tricked them. Like
Yeah, that was a big deal.
that's a big, and I wonder how long they sat on a decision like that. Like, I don't think that was just made in a simple email. Like, oh, let's have it so the traveler went to the
Yeah.
hive. Like, was that something they've been sitting on from day one, or is that something they've been like, like knowing when all these story beats were decided and when they're going to reveal them and when they're going to fit in? Like, that all takes time to really properly vet and make sure that it like makes sense from like if you're trying to plan something out for a 10-year story, it at the end it needs to make sense in some cohesive way. So it
Yes.
I imagine these things take time.
Yes, absolutely. I imagine that, the writing team isn't coming in every morning to work like hungover and they're all just like shouting stuff like, "Oh, what if we did this?" And then they
Right.
just do it. So, I mean, when they do have I don't know, quote unquote slower seasons, it's almost giving the writing team time to breathe and
Yeah.
figure out where they're trying to go with everything. So, that's very true. There's a lot that goes into something, telling a story as massive as this one.
Yeah.
How do you think this season's gonna conclude now that we've had a massive plot twist?
So,
They usually end with a bang.
right. Yeah.
So
The last couple of seasons, like Season of the Rivals, Season of the Lost, they've usually been pretty cool with like the final build up. So I'm excited about that. Obviously the major part that Osiris is kind of hung up on and keeps pestering and badgering about is the cloud city that he sees in his dreams, you know. So I think, and if I remember correctly, that's one of the other story dialogue things in one of the past weeks where he's like, "Hey, get to cracking on this dream that I've had about this city um in Neptune." So like obviously that we need to find that between now and February 28th. Um, so I imagine that's one of the things that he's probably working on or tasking Rasputin with, especially now because we're on this kind of like stalemate, right? Where we're not he's not using the war stats to actively bombard like the hive. He's just sort of holding on to them, and we're making sure that the hive aren't getting access to them. So he's got some time to kill, so to speak. So he keeps claiming that he's doing all these calculations and trying to find a model that makes sense to fit like he's like, I'm used to being like a death machine, and telling me not to send my war sats like does not compute, kind of, So
yeah.
um, it's kind of cool.
Do you think we'll find Neptune before Lightfall? Because I don't think we necessarily have to find Neptune before Lightfall. I mean, it could be a first mission sort of thing, kind of the way Savithun's Throne World was.
Yeah, that's
Originally.
true. It could be, or even like Europa, right? Like we just like that final mission
Just
where it's like
show up.
just go check out Europa, and we get there, and it's like, oh yeah, there's pyramid ships, all right.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, but basically, I, that's true. It could be like the first campaign mission. It's like, oh hey, let's go check out Neptune. Like,
Yep.
what would actually be kind of neat is, uh, you have a mission that just takes place in like the EDZ, and you get like a transmission. Like the first mission for the campaign is like not on Neo Moon. It's just some random place, and it's like, oh, by the way, go check this out. Kind of like, almost kind of like the opening mission for the Taken King, right? You're just you get
Yeah.
you get hailed to go to
Yeah. Taken King did
Phobos,
that.
which
Totally.
which is a new location, but it's like you're not going to the dread. You don't even go to the Dreadnought right
For like
away. I
several
still think,
missions. Yeah.
yeah, which I think is kind of rad. Um,
I think so too. And Witch Queen did a similar thing. I mean, you don't get to go to the throne world
yeah,
until
that's true,
that whole opening mission where you fight on her ship and you're
right?
on Mars and stuff. So
Right.
they've definitely done that sort of thing in the past. So I would, I don't know, what would you prefer? Would you rather us find Neptune first, or would you rather it be saved for Lightfall in a Taken King style sort of thing?
Mm. I don't know. It might be kind of cool. I could see the first mission being on like Europa, and you go to like the pyramid ship there, or
Hmm.
even like the Shadowkeep, right? You go to the pyramid ship there, and it's like, hey, you've been looking for Neptune. Here's where it's at, but not before you fight off like, like there's that new enemy type that we're gonna get where it's like that kind of hulking gorilla type thing.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like
whatever they're called,
maybe,
Destructor
yeah, like
people.
maybe there's one that's been on Europa this whole time, and it like attacks us. And it's like, where did this thing come from? And it gives us some like data transmission. We're like, oh, we should this is the coordinates that we needed. Like we find it on its person after we destroy this.
Yeah.
Like I could be, and that's kind of also like this implication of like, why has this thing just been here this whole time, and at no point has it attacked us? But it's like, oh no, it wanted to be destroyed so that we could find like the because like the strand is supposed to be this new energy of darkness that's never been used by anything before. Like it's ready to be found, and so it's unleashing like an enemy that's been hiding on one of these pyramid ships that we've been well aware for the last year and kind of probably been studying, but insert darkness powers, and it worked like the whole weapon crafting station, right? Like that just appeared on Mars once Mars came back after being taken by the darkness thing, and it was
Yep.
never there before, but
Yep.
now it's just like built into the wall. I could see something like that, like there's
Totally.
that one mission in the Witch Queen campaign where you're on the pyramid ship and it's like shifting as you're like kind of exploring, and it's like responding to you, and it's like maybe that first mission we even get a little taste of Strand on Europa, and like that's what draws us to go to Neo Moon or something like that. Like I don't know, they've been killing it with the campaign missions lately in terms of like interesting ways to kind of like to feed you that story, and yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
excited.
That would totally make sense. I like where your head's at, because the darkness has been drip feeding us
Right.
abilities and stuff like that. I guess different ways to tempt us into that sort of power. So that would make perfect sense for it to continue to just
Right.
give us new abilities and whatnot. So
Because
that's pretty. What's
I
that?
almost wonder if that's like what it's trying to do is tempt us with all of these,
Like new
powers and
power. Oh yeah,
abilities. Like, look,
totally.
like come to the dark side. We've got Strand and Ice.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
neat. Um, Speaking of, I kind of wish that in hindsight now, like because there's like a cool story driven element behind getting stasis, and theoretically there will be for Strand. I was kind of hoping that we'd get some kind of in-game explanation for why Light 3.0 happened. Like,
Oh yeah.
like
The
the
traveler's like, oh shit, I gotta up my game.
yeah,
It's like
basically something like that. Where like even if it's something where you just go back to the EDZ and go to the Shard of the Traveler, and it's like something insert whatever rationale or explanation you need, but it's like, oh, we've been able to like harness a new element, as opposed to just going and talking to Ikora and she's like, here, buy these things, and now you've got these new abilities. Like it's just kind of
yeah,
odd. Like,
that's true. They're normally so good about like explaining even the most
right,
like mundane things like that don't need to be explained, like
right,
the vault and stuff. And it's like there doesn't necessarily need to be an explanation for like our inventory or like stuff like that.
right.
So they're normally so good about that. So you're right, that would have been cool. And I doubt we'll get an explanation in the future about that. I'm just gonna say that it's like two businesses competing, and the traveler's like, oh man, the darkness has like a bunch of cool stuff. I guess I need more cool stuff.
Right.
It's like a capitalist system where they have to keep competing with each other.
Yeah, exactly.
That'll be my headcanon or whatever.
I like it. I approve.
But yeah, I think Lightfall's campaign has a lot to live up to. I have
Yes.
high expectations. Coming off of the Witch Queen campaign, which at least from a gameplay's perspective was fantastic.
Yes.
There's a lot riding on this one, so I don't know. I'm hopeful, but I'm curious to see how they're going to pull this off, because I'm
Yeah.
still not sold on this aesthetic either.
Yeah, there's there's a new campaign, or not a campaign, but there's a new trailer that dropped like yesterday.
Oh, that's right. I did not even watch it. Was it just like, here's the location?
Yeah, there's just a little bit more. The music actually is there was a little clip of audio, I think, of some of the new music. I mean, as always, Michael Salvatore and all those guys rock it.
Oh,
Um, I'm excited about that. Um, they showed some kind of callousy stuff, and there's this like the final, I think, scene is it like pans out and you kind of get a sense of scale of like the size of his ship,
mhm.
with respect to like the cityscape, which is kind of cool. It's neat. Um, I Interesting enough, I have not pre-ordered it yet.
Neither
Um,
have I.
I was kind of not I'm not trying to be a drama queen, but I was a little apprehensive to pre-order based on kind of some of the stuff that's been stagnant, like in terms of like quality of life. But there was a update patch thing that came out yesterday to explain some of the major changes that are coming in the new season in terms of like armor changes
Yes, a lot of quality of life stuff.
and fixing some ability stuff and trying to fix some things that have, I think, kind of been bothering me for a while. So I'm a little bit more back on track of like willing to pre-order, because it's like, yeah, it's a new campaign, new stuff, but like if the game's continuing to be frustrating to play on like kind of another scale, like I don't want to invest another $100 only to be frustrated for another year. And
Yep.
some of the stuff that came out made me hopeful for some of the more, I would say, longer running issues. So I'm excited. I'll probably pre-order it, but I'm like, I really do genuinely try to vote with my wallet to a certain degree. And I'm not one to just blindly pre-order stuff because I get a pre-order auto rifle. Like
Yeah,
I
me
don't
neither.
I don't like doing that stuff.
No, me neither.
Uh,
Anyways, I just finished watching the Neomuna trailer while you were talking. I watched it without audio though, but so I don't know how cool the music was.
it's okay.
Callus has new drip. He's got a sick new helmet apparently,
Yeah,
and his little statue, which apparently looks like a witness statue.
yeah,
Is the witness got him his own ship, his own statue?
yeah. I know.
Dang, quite the hiring
Things are
bonus.
serious. Yeah, airing bonus. What do you think
That's cool.
what do you think the raid is going to be?
Ooh, it's a wonderful question.
Because I was not expecting the Witch Queen raid to be you go into a pyramid ship and
Yeah,
uh like
fight the darkness and
yeah,
stuff like
like
Rolk.
the role being the final boss is like,
Mhm.
yeah, this is a brand new enemy model that we've never seen before.
That was pretty crazy. They're
Yeah.
usually pretty good about raids being
Yeah.
like here's a brand new thing you've never seen.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking like Last Wish with
Yeah.
like the Ahamkara
Yeah.
and Rolk and what was Shadow? Shadowkeep sucked.
Yeah.
As far as that goes, but
Well, the axes from Wrath of the Machine, uh
yeah, Siva people.
yeah. Oryx was, I mean,
Oryx
he's
wasn't like a new or like super epic and awesome,
yeah.
but not like a new character model or something like a huge like plot development of some kind.
That's true. Yeah, yeah. No, I think I probably Last Wish has like the crowning achievement of here's a yeah, the Ankara that have been claimed to be extinct. We just have been hiding one, and oh, by the way, it was taken by Oryx, or it was wished to be taken by Oryx. So
Gosh, I miss Forsaken so much. That whole concept of that raid was just so cool.
yeah,
You have to go into this like ancient city, this like ancient magic city, and hunt down a giant, thought to be extinct, possessed, wish granting dragon.
yeah,
It was just so cool. Stuff like that is just awesome.
yeah. Well, Forsaken, I don't know. It's hard to like really evaluate all the like the different campaigns, but like Forsaken in terms of campaign being like it starts off as a simple revenge plot, and then slowly develops into this much deeper, like, oh, you get revenge, but by the way, there's this whole other location that
Yeah,
you now get to go to, and oh, by the way, this is where the raid is going to be, and like you said, there's you have to hunt down a ancient evil possessed wish dragon.
yeah.
um
It starts off as like a revenge western, and
right.
then it's pretty seamless in my opinion transition to a fantasy epic,
Yeah.
So two vastly different genres that I thought
Yeah.
they blended pretty.
And probably epitomizes the Destiny as like a medium or like a genre type in itself, right? Like it's a shooter, so it's got kind of the western-y elements, but then you still have space magic, and like you said, it's a pretty seamless transition between those two in a way that's like fun, and I think effective.
Oh, totally. Anyways, as much as I love Forsaken,
Yes.
back to the trailer I just saw. Did you catch that? This it looks like the Vex Network, the expunge missions.
Yes. Yeah.
That's interesting. That's cool. Did not know we would go back there. I guess the Vex will have something to do with this, which honestly, my least favorite enemy type as far as like story goes. But hopefully they'll do something cool with them. I mean, I don't know. The Vex have never like interested me from like a lore perspective a whole lot because they're just genocidal robots
Yeah.
that time travel, and that's like the whole thing. And they're the only race that doesn't have any like characters to them.
Right.
Like all the other races have like actual characters that like represent different aspects of like their culture and whatnot. And I know that's the whole point of the Vex is that they're like a giant hive mind and that none of them are different, and that's like their whole thing. But it's I don't know, still
I
boring.
think uh, I think um so I agree with you. I think kind of what I always sort of thought when Destiny was sort of like expanding and becoming deeper, like when you started getting like Taken King era, I kind of assumed or thought that the final punchline main enemy was either going to be the Vex or the Hive. Um, like
Like the hive or
yeah, and especially with like once the Taken got introduced, it's like okay, it's probably going to be the Hive because it's like the Hive and the Taken are kind of one and the same to a certain degree. I know there's more people that will correct me, but you know they
no, but actually,
right, but like you
I know
said,
what you're.
the
I know what you're. Doing.
yeah, but the Hive are like you said, there's characters and there's like you get a sense of these individual things, and that's kind of the exact opposite of the Vex, right? Like the Vex are meant to be this hive mind thing that are just like they worship the darkness, um, but that's all you're really going to get out of them. Um, and there's not really personalities to them in the same way that like oh, it's interesting to hear about Oryx and Zivu and uh Savathun and their constant like one upping each other and killing each other to gain power and all of that kind of like interesting stuff. Like you don't get that with the Vex, and so it kind of makes sense that like they're always probably going to be somewhat of a backseat in terms of like actual main villainy.
Yes,
Um, and I could see them having a deeper punchline at some point, but they're not the final shape. And if they are, that would actually be kind of disappointing.
that
Um,
would suck. Imagine
yeah,
if the Vex are the final like
yeah.
enemy that you have to face. That
You
would
just you go back to Vault Glass.
actually it was Atheon the entire time.
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah,
it's one just massive loop uh where you just so
yeah, yeah. You get to the end of Destiny's story, and then it resets to the beginning because the Vex have made a giant time loop.
right. It's
That's
kind of the you like wake up and it's like you're actually on the cart in Skyrim and the guy's like, "Oh good, you're finally awake." Like,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, we're getting pretty meta now, but
Yeah, that would
yeah,
be.
no, I'm
Yeah,
I'm I am excited to see where this all goes
yeah,
at the end.
yeah,
And everything that I've seen so far is making me excited for Lightfall and the final shape.
yeah.
It's I'm getting to the point where I'm more excited about the campaign stuff and less excited about the in between seasons. But
Mhm.
if we get more season of the Seraph type reveals, and I know they're not all going to be Season of the Seraph heavy, reveals, but tying up a few more loose ends before we get to the final shape with seasonal content, I think would be pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. But thank you, Rob, for sitting down chatting with me. And thank you to our lovely audience, as always, for listening to this episode. Until next time, peace out.
You can put this voice recording away and go on with your life, because you and I both know you'd have me yapping in your ear for the rest of your days.
Want to further the discussion? Get in touch with us at any of our Twitter handles, all of which can be found in our podcast description.